let's talk about the reconfiguration of the criminal map of our country. That's crazy. We're looking at a way to date it. There's been significant movements in the last year. So significant things have changed. We're closing out 2025, at least in terms of the war in Sinaloa, the civil war between the factions of the Cartel, the Maizas and the Chapitos. Since September 9, 2024, we've been facing a fratricidal war that is between brotherhoods that at some point swore loyalty to each other. We've delved deeply into the space of Carmen Aristegui regarding the surrender of Yoma to his ex-criminal godson Joaquin Guzman Lopez. This struggle for territorial control intensified. In this year's summary, we can say that the Sinaloa Cartel is precisely the criminal group with the greatest presence in Mexico, as is the CJNG. Both are predominant in virtually all states. They are the two most dominant drug cartels in the world because they have a presence in 40 countries. That's more or less what the United States DEA reports in its most recent reports. I believe that this war we are seeing between the Pochas and the Yomas has also created a power vacuum in some regions. Absolutely. I'm trying to get rich while you guys is playing. While you guys want to fight each other, I'm trying to take them positions, no? Ain't that the natural way of thinking about it? And in these places, they've unleashed instability. Let's recall the cases of Zacatecas, for example. A fierce struggle that the four letters had with the Yomas. Now in this alliance with the Pochas, they have been able to enter Chiapas, where it was sworn that there was no drug trafficking. We see that the four letters has also reached out with its tentacles to take over not only drug trafficking, but also migrant trafficking. I insist there's a diversification in the range of crimes that fall precisely under organized crime. Yeah, there are going to be new ones. There's new positions, new hustles, let's take over this, let's take over that. These organizations have been able to carry these out. These reports, I insist, from the DEA also indicate that the internal dispute between the four letters and the Sinaloa Cartel has expanded its influence over Mexico's illicit drug trade. Just to clarify the point, this means that in this alliance that many specialists assure does not exist between the four letters and the Sinaloa Cartel, I can tell you, Manuel, that there is such an understanding. It's not a coincidence that the trafficking, for example, of heroin and cocaine in the United States has increased in the last year, or in this year that's about to end. This is announced by the Department of State on behalf of the four letters, and this is due to the fact that the four letters has occupied the routes, the very lines of understanding for drug trafficking, with all that implies bribery networks, tunnels and other methods to carry out this illicit trafficking of narcotics. These are the same lines that the Sinaloa Cartels has established for years and that the Chapitos have lent to the four letters in exchange for leading some of their territories in the Mexican Republic. It's a mutual understanding. Coño, man.
No mames, güey.
Fuck. Imagine that. This Magneto and Professor X. This is anybody who had to make friends with their enemies. But we all knew there'd be a standoff at the end. Now what they're saying we're looking at is, your enemy comes to you and they say, we need your help. And they'll be like, cool, we need access to everything that your father and your uncle and whoever else built up over the last 50 years. We need access to all of it, and now we're going to make it work. Now you got these guys running areas for you and this and that. Are you still you? I would argue that you are not. I would argue that shit done changed. And there's a new sheriff in town.
Your services are no longer needed in the community.
This point that Luis made is important because we spoke this week with David Salcedo. Carmen spoke last week about these arrests that took place in Zapopan, Jalisco, of the father-in-law and brother-in-law of Ivan Archivaldo, leader of the Pochas. And David understood that although this understanding exists between the two factions, there could have been some degree of collaboration or information from the four letters to make this action possible. We Asked the same question Jose Luis asked the other day. Could it be 4 letters just saying, all right, we got these guys, they need us, let's knock down their big guys off the chessboard? We talk about how the security job is so dangerous that we've gone through in the last, since it's gone down, I'm going to say six or 7 heads of security. And now, the person that Jose Luis was hypothesizing that might be the next in line after Panu, that was close and trusted enough, boom, went to jail the same week. And so did his father. What he's saying is, it's quite possible that the letters made that happen. Everything is everything. People gotta get their headlines popping. These guys got businesses to run. We don't know what's what. Take everything with a punch of salt. I mean, pinch or punch. He said it might take the 4 letters to make these actions possible. I don't know how this recent arrest, note that these arrests of the father-in-law and the brother-in-law of Ivan Archivaldo, Mario Lindoro and Mario Alberto Lindoro, respectively, are in addition to the arrests. He said it's not just the arrest, it's also the unaliving of Panu. Remember very well, this past December 21st, Oscar Noe Medina Gonzalez, the Panu, the security chief of the Chapitos. I think this restructuring of the Sinaloa Cartel is more due to internal losses within the cartel itself. And what do I mean by that? I have information
Too much information and shit.
that indicates that rather than the assassination of Panu and the apprehension of Ivan's father-in-law and brother-in-law, it is an internal restructuring by Ivan, by the leader of the Chapitos himself. According to the information
Too much information.
I have, Ivan gave an ultimatum to both his father-in-law and his brother-in-law to surrender to authorities. It's not a coincidence. And let me tell you why. Because according to this person with whom I was able to talk said that the leak of images of Ivan that had been disseminated in recent days on X, we could find many images of Ivan, including with his children, whose faces were covered. That leak of images would have been ordered by these characters, including his brother-in-law, his father-in-law, and even Panu, who was one of the closest associates. In fact, Panu's a close friend, or rather was a close friend of Ivan. He attended one of his child's baptisms. And according to this source I have, Ivan will continue in some way, as they say in criminal slang, to betray these close associates who have not been loyal to his organization. Hold on. There was a whole lot to unpack right there. Jose Luis came out, hammers fucking blazing, all right, mincing no words. Let's unpack some of what he said already. He said that these arrests and this termination of Panu might just be a restructuring from what he's hearing, from the information he's getting, from the person that he's talking to. Just think about a restructuring. You give people their pink slips, huh? You know how people walk out the office on TV with their box? You know what I mean? They got their box full of their shit that they had at work. Not these guys. When they decide you're done, you're done. When they decide the job's over, you're going to prison or the upper room. Just think about that restructuring, though. He just cleaning house. I got these guys that came and helped me, and basically I had to give them everything for it. And in order for me to continue, you guys, my friends, my family, y'all got to get the fuck out of here. You get done up in a restaurant, and you guys, I love y'all. So y'all are going to have to make that call. Yeah, the same call my dad told us to make a long time ago. That's a crazy restructuring. That's not restructuring if you ask me. That's liquidating. It's a bust out. You're liquidating your men. You'll be lucky if you keep your old skin at the end of that. Because now somebody got your routes. That's what Yoma's fighting for now. The Hats, at this point, are fighting for the other half of what they had. Because it's falling into the hands of somebody else already, man. That's not a good look. Just think about that, though. The restructuring from the top down. Everybody must go. They're saying, hey, man, from what I'm hearing, Ivan gave an ultimatum to the brother-in-law and the father-in-law, turn yourself in. And the other guy might be of his doing as well. You're going to tell me loyalty? You're going to tell me so-and-so should have stood standing? You're going to tell me so-and-so should have stood tall? The two Chapitos work for... That's it. That's what it sounded like, ain't it? Sounded like they gave up everything. It's all yours now. Is that a W? Would they have done better just all the brothers make the emergency break glass call to the United States and say, hey, man, listen, and then leave the Yomas to fight off the four letters? Instead, the whole thing got broken to 1,000 pieces. There's only one winner in all this, from what I can see. Panu was a close friend of Ivan, attended one of his children's baptisms. According to this source, he will continue betraying these close associates who have not been loyal to his organization. So what? I'm trying to understand the angle that he got into about the pictures of his children blocked out. Was he saying that his brother-in-law is the one that was leaking those photos? To clarify my point, El Panu had not arrived in Mexico City for about 2 days, as the report from the Attorney General's office of Mexico City stated. He had already been in Mexico for at least 2 weeks, settled with some of his relatives precisely out of fear of reprisals from the Chapitos cartel. So he was hiding from them. According to José Luis Montenegro, Panu was in Mexico City hiding from the Chapitos. So in other words, it's not that the net is tightening, at least in these two specific actions, the arrest and the unaliving of Panu, but rather that these actions are due to an internal adjustment ordered, let's say, with the approval of Ivan himself. Approval? It seems like they don't need approval no more. Wow. Shit done changed, boy, quick in a year. Correct. It's a settling of scores, a purge, as they say in the criminal world. And why is this? Because the four letters has had this alliance with the Chapitos, which is very convenient. Let's put it that way. Fucking right it is. And Mencho's been putting his closest people in charge. But of course, why wouldn't he? Hit the like button if you have yet to do so. I'm referring to El Músico, the Gardener, and also and El Plumas. These people are not improvised. These are people with the utmost trust of Mencho, who have been infiltrating the ranks of the Chapitos to consolidate his dominance. And I insist, I say it's opportunistic because Mencho, as I mentioned a moment ago, he has seen fit, let's say it like that, even though it sounds a bit bad, he has seen it fit to occupy the brocane trafficking routes of the Chapitos in order to have influence in the United States. And let me tell you, that interest is growing. That is growing, because I tell you what, I see videos of dudes in Cali or whatever pressing live streamers and shit, and they're talking about, oh, we're with the four letters. We already know how that goes. You buy a bag from somebody who bought a bag from somebody who bought a bag from somebody, you're plugged, right? But that influence is there. That influence is there, and it's going to be something I have to deal with. Same way MS-13 didn't start nowhere else but here. Somebody's doing a line right now, and they're claiming that they're part of it. You know what I mean? So, shout out Eddie Jimenez. Bro, I hear all this, and it's way too much information.
Too much information and shit.
The four letters is taking over this criminal modus operandi, this structure of the Chapitos to strengthen its criminal operation in states where it previously had no presence. It's a bust out. Who's watched Goodfellas here? A restaurant comes to you, they're in trouble, they need a loan, they can't make their first payment, you start busting them out. You take everything they got, you run up their lines of credits, you take everything that benefits you. They get left with nothing at the end of the day but the bill. They got new routes, new towns, chicas, champagne. They managed to take out a giant portion of their enemy from the inside. Corporate-like structure. Ain't that what they always had? They had the military-style structure. But this is Fortune 500 shit they got going on over here right now. What this is going to end up with is the weakening of the very structure of the sheet metal and mesh. There's a weakening. And imagine if the next few months or in the next 2 years, the four letters is already entering Sinaloa in a big way fully, right? In other words, the four letters taking over one of the states it had never controlled before. That seems to me the diagnosis and what's coming in this war. One of the two sides has to fall. The hats or the pizzas. Or even the criminal career is no longer about having a large amount of territory under their control. In the case of Ivan, leader of the Chapitos, and Maito Flaco, the fight now is to find out who will get the best plea deal. Well, it's looking like Ivan's already making deals. Might not be with the United States government, but he made deals. Deal. You get a deal, you get a deal, you get a deal, you get a deal. There it is. Shout out Chicken Knuckle. Fuck you, pay me. That's it. I think Mencho will end IAG at the end. Man, it's not looking good. He need to break glass. They're giving deals. The real problems start when they control all of Mexico. You think Ivan is starting to panic and taking out the ones he thinks might take him over? I think you're missing the plot, Velez. I think he's took over. He's overtook already. I don't think he's starting to panic. I think that panic came when he called his enemies and said, "I need your help." No? Am I wrong? One dude is pushing the other dude's power structure out of the way. And Ivan has no choice but to say, "Okay, tell me if I'm wrong." We'll find out who gets the best plea deal with the United States. The fight now is to find out who will get the best plea deal. Okay, he talking about a plea deal as far as deals with the United States. They got him. They're giving them out all day. Or who manages to establish better negotiations with the Mexican government, which I doubt. The focus is now more on the United States because there are ongoing legal proceedings. Yoma is awaiting sentencing. The hearing is scheduled, but it's been postponed. There have been some changes so that Yoma's defense can make the relevant allegations in Yoma Zambada, and there's also the circumstances of the agreements with the Guzman Lopez family, with Ovidio and Joaquin. So they had to push that back another 90 days. So everybody gets the right deal. That's called snitching, right? No? Cooperation. There's so many rules to the cooperation. Oh, you can't talk to nobody, can't do nobody. They're all the bosses doing it. That shit is only for you bottom feeders. If they're working together, how does Metro trust he won't snitch on him to the U.S.? He don't give a fuck about the U.S. And I'm sure he's not giving him enough rope to give to the U.S. If they're working together, how does Metro trust that he won't snitch on him to? He don't know. He might just go Teres route before that happens. And Mencho so trust to IAG after what they did to Yoma? Nah, Mencho's smarter than that. Yeah, nah, the only reason he did anything is because the upper hand belongs to him. Which is another way to analyze and to understand the movements that are taking place in our country in relations to these alliances that in principle seem strange with respect to groups that have been primarily antagonistic. José Luis has also spoken about the resurgence of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, or that the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel never really went away, and about alliances with Sinaloa and the Gulf cartel, specifically in this case against the four letters. In the case of Guanajuato, there's a report today in the Milenio newspaper by Javier Jimenez that talks about it completely. Look, that's very interesting because there are unprovoked alliances in the case of the four letters with the Chapitos. Let's remember that episode where it was precisely Mencho's people who snatched Ivan Archivaldo and Jesus Alfredo in that bar La Leche in Puerto Vallarta. We have also seen how, in this reconfiguration of the criminal map, Misa have formed links with the Northeast cartel to facilitate the sale and distribution of rugs. I don't know who Misa is. Using routes that were controlled at the time by Yoma Zambada. And now we also see how the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, this cartel that emerged as a criminal cell dedicated precisely to the illegal extraction of hydrocarbons from the Huachicol, also joins, as I insisted at the beginning of this intervention, in this diversification of crimes with the range of organized crime. I think that, well, everyone is appealing to their survival. That's it. That's the panic you're talking about right there, Velez. Other cartels with presence in Mexico, such as the Michoacan family, have also restructured and have reached states not only in Guerrero and Michoacan, which they already controlled, but also in other parts of the state of Mexico. That's bananas. That's the vacuum. Everybody coming out the woodwork, staking their claim. The old man's gone. These guys are fractured. The shit is at war. What can we get out of this? Even this weekend, we saw some videos of the four letters announcing the arrival in Huitzilac in the state of Morelos. In other words, each of these criminal maps, each of these drug trafficking operators is acquiring more territory. And it would also be worthwhile to bring up an interesting topic here, because the reconfiguration of the cartels is going to be much greater and even faster now that the 2027 midterm elections are approaching. Remember that each of these groups has criminal and political pacts with the ruling class. All right, this guy does not mince words.
Too much information and shit.
The arrival of certain drug traffickers or groups to certain areas in the country will not be understood without the agreement and collusion of certain local, state, and, well, also federal leaders.
Too much information and shit.
Ooh-wee. This guy don't care. He don't leave that room right there. But I insist. I don't want to ignore the question you asked me, but yes, there are different alliances between various organizations. There's this understanding between groups that at some point we're antagonists or rivals that are joining together to combine forces. And another thing, let me tell you, the Michoacan family divided into factions like the new Michoacan family and United Cartels. Both have also already joined forces despite being designated by the U.S. as foreign terrorist organizations. They have dedicated a large part of their criminal activities to the trafficking of Fetty Wap and Method Man, Brocaine, and also Sherwin. Where do you see things going in 2026? He just told you. Straight to the fucking White House of Mexico, man. You know what I mean? You say there will be a deepening of these criminal alliances. We're going to see a complete reshuffling of the criminal landscape in the country, aren't we? I believe there will be a merger of the cartels, at least in practice, in the type of attack operations, logistics, and even drug trafficking. We're going to see how many of these cartels will rename themselves. Meaning, you probably don't sell dope no more, but you a security staff now. You a security cartel now. We're going to use you. I mean, that Sinaloa cartel is about to disappear. It has. As far as we're concerned, that shit been gone since the moment that man came across the U.S. border. It's been over with. Sinaloa cartel is about to disappear as we know it. It is no longer this hegemonic figure that one time operated under the name of the Guadalajara cartel, led by Ernesto Fonseca, Rafael Caro Quintero, and Felix Gallardo. We'll see how the Chapitos fully join the four letters. And from there, one of these structures weakens. Whether it's the pizzas or the hats, we're going to see the increase and predominance of the new Michoacan family, evidently from Jalisco, four letters, and there's going to be an internal war for control of these territories. I insist, in the context of the upcoming midterm elections in Mexico. And very likely, Manuel, we will also see the effort, on the other hand, of the Mexican authorities to deliver hard blows against these organizations. Let no one be surprised if, at the beginning of the first quarter of 2026, the war that Claudia Sheinbaum, the president, along with Omar Garcia Harfuch and the Attorney General of the Republic, Ernestina Godoy, are now waging, this trio of great power in Mexico, leads to a spectacular capture of one of these Mexican drug lords to solidify the image that they want to project, right? He's saying a big one is going to go first quarter between January and March is going to go down. This is a hostile takeover. This is a merger. This is company shit that's happening here, you know? And also what that compliance with the orders, with the pressures that the United States has imposed unfairly through tariffs, from the pressures in the exchange of information, it is assumed that many of these actions are motivated by the exchange of information from the United States to Mexico. We've already seen that many high-ranking officials in the United States have stated that today more than ever, Mexico is cooperating in security matters to provide strategic information that will lead to the weakening of the cartels. With the surrender of many of these targets, these priority objectives for the Department of Justice and the state in the United States, and well, completely agree with you, plot twist, AMLO betrayed Yoma to to fracture Sinaloa and let Metro take over. Let me tell you something. What I was about to say too is all these arrests, all of these expellings, quote unquote extraditions, snatchings, all of this, I ain't seen it hurt the business. He said the DEA put out a report that it's more. Now they could be lying because Trompito got a bone to pick, right? But that shit ain't working. This motherfucker's getting stronger. Here's what happens. All these little factions come out of the fucking woodwork. They get absorbed. New game, different day. Same old shit. Worse, maybe. Flaco's stronger than I would have thought. Psh. They made them go get help real quick. We've already seen that many high-ranking officials in the United States have stated that today, more than ever, Mexico is cooperating in security matters to provide strategic information that will lead to the weakening of the cartels. With the surrender of many of these targets, these priority objectives for the Department of Justice and State in the United States, and well, let's see if in practice, the triad itself, let's call it that, the trinity of security in Mexico, headed by Scheinbaum, suffers a hard blow. I insist, I've mentioned in other forums that we shouldn't be surprised if one of the Chapitos, or even Flaco himself, falls in the first quarter of 2026. We'll keep this prediction in mind, José Luis, for the first quarter of 2026. Thank you very much. José Luis ain't mincing fucking words, bro. He's not playing no games with the words. He letting it be known. He giving it all up. Like Eddie said.
Too much information and shit.
We got some more that goes with this. We're going to go to the crema lady, Anabel Hernandez. That everybody seems to say that she puts extra cream on the tacos. I don't know where the fuck she's at. She's in the Matrix somewhere. She's in Running Man or... I've already discussed on other occasions here at this table. We're dealing with the case of an important faction of the Sinaloa cartel. But even so, I repeat, El Panu was no idiot. The Panu had his own economic resources. In the last few hours, a revelation has come to light that, if confirmed, could be one of the most serious we've heard in a long time. Investigative journalist Anabel Hernandez revealed information that points at Ivan Archivaldo Guzman's inner circle. We're not talking about petty criminal or just any old settling of scores. We're talking about El Panu, a close friend and trusted associate of Ivan, terminated in broad daylight in Zona Rosa of Mexico City, one of the most heavily guarded areas in the country. And this is where things get unsettling. The man was not hiding. He was not fleeing. He was not in the mountains. He was calmly eating with his mother in a restaurant, just minutes from the Public Security Secretariat's bunker, moving with the confidence that not just anyone would have. A man with $1 million reward in the middle of a brutal internal war, without visible guards and without a single shot fired beforehand. The question is inevitable. Why did he feel so protected? Who could guarantee him that peace in the heart of the capital? Because according to Anabel Hernandez, and to what she reveals, the answer is much darker than it seems. Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not opinion. It is information.
Too much information and shit.
That, if confirmed, see, that's the type of wordplay that they fuck around with. You know what I'm saying? So that still means it's opinion. It's opinion until it's confirmed, right? But he's saying it's not opinion, so that's wordplay. It is information that, if confirmed, leaves the institutions completely exposed. I think that this event that occurred in Zona Roja is something that we really need to analyze from different points of view. I'd put on the table a first element that should really catch our attention. As we Mexicans say colloquially, color, size of the plate, right? Because one might ask, indeed, Panu was not only an operator, a head of armies. At the service of the Chapitos, he was also a very important element for the logistics in the trafficking of Fediwap for the Chapitos. In October 2023, I had the opportunity to conduct a historic interview. And I say historic because what he reveals, mini leak, is that he interviewed Damaso Lopez Serrano alias Minileak, when he was still free, collaborating with the United States government. And he spoke in depth about who was who in the Chapitos structure. And there he talks about Jose Angel Canovio, whose existence no one had even mentioned at the time. And he talks about Panu, who was thought to be a low-profile archer. And yet he's, I don't know what AI got wrong about that, a low-profile guy. And yet he speaks to us and opens our eyes to the importance he had. I would even say emotionally. For Ivan himself, the leader of the Chapitos, he, Panu, not only wasn't just a rug operator, he wasn't just the army chief, but he was a close friend, confidant, personal friend, with parents, literally with parents, godparents, because of the baptisms of Ivan Archivaldo's children. Nobody with $1 million bounty on their head sits quietly in a restaurant by chance, much less someone who, according to the investigation, even had a personal connection to the group's leadership. Listen, I don't care if Trompito himself tells me, hey man, you're safe. Don't worry, sit down, enjoy your dinner. Fuck you. Rest in peace, Josiah Whitlock Jr. I'm still going to have some security. I'm not going to be comfortable. None of that shit. We're assuming a man has at least a couple of brain cells, right? We have to consider that in order for him to have remained even during the bloody war between the Mayos and the Chapitos, even though the United States government was asking for $4 million for his capture, although he was supposed to be one of the most wanted men, he was chilling, walking calmly around Mexico City. Just like that, that's all. According to newspaper reports, first to bingo, took his mom to mass, then he went to eat at a restaurant in one of the areas with the most video surveillance in Mexico City, which is Zona Rosa. And not only that, Panu sits down to enjoy Oriental dishes with his family, with his mother. Are we really thinking he'd be crazy enough to put his mother at risk? He did. I don't believe it, because rug traffickers do many terrible things, but for them, their mothers are a holy thing. They are more than the Virgin of Guadalupe. Well then, this is a message to every Bartel motherfucker out there that thinks that their government is going to keep them safe. This is proof positive that that can't happen. He said he was going to expose his mother to being in a restaurant that was just a few meters away from offices of the Mexico City Public Security Secretariat in one of the neighborhoods that, precisely because the bunker of Mexico City's Public Secretariat offices is there. It's one of the areas with the most video surveillance, which, by the way, they have let us see the cameras. I wish they would put the cameras and let us see who brought the man to the restaurant. Where did the unalivers flee to? If the Panu was not guarded, I repeat, if he was not guarded, if Panu was a leader of the Chapitos armies, and while it is true that the Chapitos are declining, there is no doubt about that. They are in crisis. There is no money to pay the structure they previously had. Why not? Because that money going somewhere else, because somebody else doing them jobs. I've already discussed on other occasions here at this table that we are dealing with a Bartel, an important faction of the Sinaloa Bartel. But even so, I repeat, and Panu was not an idiot. He had his own economic resources. I'm going to be in a restaurant in the heart of Mexico City, a few minutes from the Mexican Secretariat, without an escort? Because obviously, no one fired a shot. If he had hitmen, the whole thing would have ended, and excuse my language, but in a massacre. Because those guys bust at those guys, the hitmen bust at them, something terrible happens. Why wasn't Pano with his hitmen? Could anyone think that he was going to sit there eating, I repeat, with his mother without any supervision? No. The question here is, who was giving custody to Panu that made him so comfortable, sitting about 3 minutes away from the information I've obtained, and I will leave it at that. I conclude with this, is that part of the escort that Panu had that day were precisely elements of the Secretariat of Public Security of Mexico City, whose head is Pablo Vasquez. If Pablo Vasquez, who is one of the closest people to Omar Garcia Harfuch, Secretary of Federal Public Security, who in turn was accused by Menelik himself of having received bribes from the Chapitos at certain times because he was closely linked to the criminal group. Listen here, that goes with something Velez put in the Discord today about Omar Garcia Harfuch's father's connections to the Bartels. And now he's the Secretary of Security. These Mexican journalists, whether it be Annabelle, whether it be whoever, and whether it be José Luis, I don't know their political affiliation, but they're not mincing words, and they got a lot of information.
Too much information and shit.
They're not saying names. They calling out names. As far as she's concerned, Omar Garcia Harfuch, Pablo Vasquez are protecting people, Bartel members. José Luis seems to believe that Ivan put out the hit on Panu. She's not concerned with who put out the hit. She's concerned with why he was sitting pretty. And she's connecting that to Omar Garcia Harfuch. So the question is Ivan cleaning house by the hand of the other boss of the four letters, removing his people in power and replacing them with soldiers from the four letters? Has he given up the entire house? The Chapitos lose 80% of their leadership in less than 50 days of war. I need to do a little research and go find, and I mentioned it in Cartel with 2 L's, the tell that a lot of these people were betrayed by their own. These people that were involved in the Culiacanazo and stuff like that. We got to go through the list of all of these guys that were in position and then out of position. In position and then in the upper room. We got to go through this list. Los Chapitos lose 80% of their leaders in less than 500 days of war. Ivan and Alfredo are on the ropes. Their main leaders have been unalived by rivals, shot unalived by federal forces, or under arrest or are on the run. Ivan and Jesus, the 2 Chapitos who remain at large, are in serious trouble. The war in Sinaloa hasn't even lasted a year and a half, and they already lost their most important leaders. On December 23rd, 2 key financial operators were arrested in Jalisco. Mario Alfredo Lindoro, who we hear now, who we hear from José Luis Montenegro, that Ivan pulled the button on him and gave them an ultimatum and said, hey, man, turn yourself in or I'm going to get you out of here. On December 23rd, 2 key financial operators were arrested in Jalisco. Mario Alfredo Lindoro Navidad El Siete and Mario Lindoro Elenes El Niño, brother-in-law and father-in-law respectively of the eldest son of Pocha Guzman. Both had a crucial task for the survival of Los Menores, ensuring a constant cash flow to finance the war. That same day, but in Culiacán, Alan Núñez Herrera was unalived. He supplied them with weapons to fight against the Hats. And just hours earlier, on December 21st, the number 3 in the Chapitos structure and their top security chief was executed in Mexico City, El Panu, who José Luis Montenegro says was ousted and pushed out of the Chapitos and hiding in Mexico from Ivan. That's his words, not mine. The 4 losses before Christmas within less than 60 hours represent the accelerated loss of money, ammunition, and protection for Ivan and Jesus, and a reality that is now impossible to hide. The historic Sinaloans who protect Los Chapitos because they watched them grow up in Culiacán or because they are loyal followers of their father are becoming extinct. Miss me with the loyalty. That shit only lasts for so long. It's a changing of the guard before our very eyes, says a source in the security cabinet. The Sinaloans are losing ground in Culiacán, and a new generation has come in to protect Los Chapitos, who have already seen that their circle isn't invincible, says an agent deployed in the Mexican Pacific. Everybody got an agent, a source, or something that's pointing the finger at somebody else. In October 2024, Milenio published a list compiled during the previous administration by the Secretariat of National Defense, which tracked 10 leaders who had the Los Chapitos troops. These were the most trusted people in the faction who would go all out against the Hats and other rivals. Old school capos and millennials hardened in the family narco wars since birth. The true lords of lead. December 31st marks 479 days of the war in Sinaloa, and 8 out of the 10 of them are already out of the fight. Are already out of the fight. Their fates are a mosaic of typical outcomes for those who enter organized crime. Unalived by rivals, unalived by federal forces, arrested, or on the run. all under the shadow of having been betrayed by their own friends. Ain't that the truth? This is how the leaders have been falling. The first to fall this year was El Gavilan. We covered him. The mysterious head of Los Chapitos hitmen. And there was somebody before him, might have been PG, who was unalived on January 6, 2025 during a hammer fight against the Rugrats, the armed wing of the Hats. His unaliving was concealed by Ivan to avoid showing weakness. But the beginning of the year already marked a trend, a slow bleeding of Sinaloa leaders. The following month, in Calamaya, state of Mexico, another important accountant for the Chapitos was unalived, Mario Alberto Jimenez Castro, El Castor. I think we covered him too, for whom the United States had offered a $1 million reward. A hooded gunman, a hooded hammerman ended his life in a parking lot. Yeah, we do remember that. He drove up. A common setting for meetings between friends that end in deadly betrayals. The U.S. offered $1 million for El Castor. We covered that. The same February, the powerful financial operator Jose Angel Canovio Nzunza, known as El Güero, was arrested in Culiacan, Sinaloa. The United States was seeking him as one of the main exporters of Fetty Wap, and coincidentally, his arrest came days after the Chapitos felt pressure from Washington following their designation as a terrorist organization for opioid trafficking. I wonder who turned him over. Jorge Humberto Figueroa Benitez, known as El 27 or La Peris, was unalived in May. Damn, that was that far? That was that long ago? It feels like yesterday. In a confrontation with the military in Novalato. Wonder who turned him in. Like his predecessor, as head of security for Los Menores, Nestor Isidro Perez, El Nini, his unaliving sparked speculation among social media users identified as alleged members of organized crime. How did the authorities know his exact location? Was he betrayed? No mama's way.
No mommy's way.
The last person unalived on the list is El Panu, who was executed 4 days before Christmas. His open and well-known conflicts in Culiacan with Jaciel Abdiel Guzman Araujo, Ivan's cousin, have revived theories about defections and disloyalty within the Chapitos inner circle. Who betrayed that guy? The physical unalivings of other leaders haven't been confirmed, but their presence has disappeared. Federal sources confirmed to Milenio that at least 3 of them have ceased to actively support the sons of Pocha. Samuel León Alvarado, El León, reportedly fled Sinaloa after the explosive attacks in Culiacan in February of this year. Liborio Núñez Aguirre, El Karateca, allegedly made a deal with the federal government to stop supporting the conflict between the Chapitos and the Hats in exchange for the definitive suspension of acts depriving him of his liberty. This is what Marquitos Toys was asking for. Remember? He wanted protection from everything. I'll stay out of it. Just give me protection from everything. All right? So this guy right here went to the government, stopped supporting the conflict between the Chapitos and the Hats in exchange for the definitive suspension of acts depriving him of his liberty, consisting of detention or extradition purposes, a request that was made public in 2023. The only international leader on the list, Jovanis de Jesus Avila Villadiego, no mames, we English, motherfucker, do you speak? Chiquito Malo, leader of the Colombian clan del Golfo, also reportedly withdrew his support in Mexico to focus on his own country following the U.S. crackdown. Yes, PG was arrested. The Colombia rug traffickers are fighting their own domestic battles to get involved abroad. Chiquito Malo just lost a brother in his own war. They're preoccupied with their own affairs. Only 2 leaders remain, but the influence is diminished within the Chapitos inner circle and the national organized crime landscapes are trafficker Juan Pablo Lozano El Camarón, who may be hiding in the United States, far from the troubles of Sinaloa, and Pedrito Loaiza, son of Don Pedro Loaiza, a rug trafficking legend in the Sierra Madre Occidental, who hasn't played a prominent role in the conflict. And although they're considered top leaders, other losses have surrounded the Chapitos in the last year. The arrest of Mauro Alberto Núñez Ojeda Hando, which is the pilot, a trusted confidant of Ivan Archivaldo, to Kevin Alonso El 200, a hitman boss. The cousins step in. At this point, Ivan and Jesus only have their cousins left. The core group, they didn't mention that their uncle's on their ass too. At this point, Ivan and Jesus only have their cousins left, the core group of their blood relatives, but they don't seem as skilled or experienced as the men they've lost in the war, says the source who conducts criminal intelligence in the state. It is likely, he says, that other relatives of the Chapitos will rise to positions of power, such as Alberto Zepeda Cano, alias El Chapito Lomas, and his brother, Joel Zepeda Cano, alias El 23, and that Jaciel Abdiel Guzman Araujo, puñeta, no mames.
No mames, güey.
The American cousin will gain influence. However, the recent downfall of Ivan's brother-in-law and father-in-law demonstrates a compromised family circle. Listen, miss me with the American guys are going to come take over. Bro, that shit ain't y'all's no more. That shit belongs into the person that you came in, that you brought in to give you the insurance policy and try to keep you from losing. And in exchange, you give him everything. It's a bust out. This shows us the changing of the guard. The native Sinaloans are stepping back, and their places could be taken by enforcers from the, yeah, that's it right there, from the four letters. That would be historic, something never seen before, the military officer assures. It seems to be what's happening. Earlier this year, Ivan forged an unlikely alliance with the four letters in exchange for greater protection against eventual arrest or assassination and increased capacity to attack the Hats. The Chapitos will share routes established by their father with Mencho, who has been implementing an aggressive expansion plan throughout northern Mexico for years. The pact stipulated that a high-ranking member of the CJNG, such as Audias Flores Silva, El Jardinero, would take charge of the two brothers' security, using the same force and strategies that have made Mencho untouchable. To assume complete control of this difficult mission, he would have to infiltrate the inner circle of the Chapitos security chiefs, a compact group made up of native Sinaloans. When we in government learned that there was an alliance between the Chapitos and the four letters, this was one of the most worrying possibilities, that the strength of the four letters would be evident in the displacement of the Sinaloa group, and they would gradually become indispensable to the Chapitos. They're going to need them to run anything. So do they still exist? Without El Panu and other security chiefs who were childhood friends of Ivan Archivaldo and Jesus, the CJNG emerges stronger at the beginning of 2026. The survival of the Chapitos depends on them. One more betrayal and the fire will spread throughout Sinaloa, he asserts. I think we've passed that moment already. There's something going on, and things are going to be very different in Mexico come 2026. They're different in Mexico right now. A lot of big allegations have been made in this conversation. A whole lot. Not by me, but by the people that are in the know that got the information.
Oh, too much information and shit.